Greetings and welcome to this edition of
Positronic.
I'm Barry P. Cook. I'm here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks. It was called Reflections. And as it begins, we see that Rutherford is having a nightmare about some type of engineering-based accident. Next, Boimler and Mariner get booth duty at a Federation outpost where they're tasked with fulfilling a recruitment drive for Starfleet. Something goes wrong shortly thereafter with Rutherford's implant, and another personality takes over his body. And we can only see the actual Rutherford, or the one we're used to anyway, in Reflections. Mariner turns herself into a carnival barker trying to get recruits down at the booth, at which she has a model of the Stargazer, and which is next to a life-size cutout of Kirk and Spock with face holes, like for pictures. But her neighbor from the Archaeologist Guild in the next booth, who isn't Vosh for some reason, I don't know why that is, keeps derailing her progress and taunting her and stuff. New Rutherford has a chat with Tendi, but when actual Rutherford, in his reflection, somehow manages to punch the implant and hurt the other personality, it soon becomes obvious that he's not himself, and Tendi calls for a medical team. But alternate Rutherford manages to beam himself to the captain's yacht, which he attempts to steal, but Shrax catches up with him. And it turns out that the alternate personality is a younger version of Rutherford, and the two of them now have to battle for dominance in his implant-connected mind. We again see a sort of memory flash of the doctors who implanted Rutherford's implant, seemingly talking about lying to him about why he has the thing. Back at the booth, some passersby taunt the ensigns for not being able to leave the booth. They were ordered not to leave the booth by Ransom. And one of them asks for the real story of what happened to Captain Sisko, to which Mariner responds by saying, "He's working hard in the Celestial Temple." The twin Rutherfords decide to determine which personality will be dominant by having a race in Rutherford's mind, and both build their own vehicles. Of course, Rutherford builds the Delta Flyer. Back at the booth, when another passerby takes Boimler's rank pip and throws it on the ground, and before stepping on it, Boimler loses his shit, and it seems to encourage people around to inquire about enlisting because they like his confidence. Back in Rutherford's mind during the race, both Rutherfords are attacked by a Romulan warbird, and it turns out that real Rutherford used his imagination to bring his friends along with him on the flyer, and they help him escape the Romulan warbird and rescue his other self before his ship explodes with him in it, which doesn't stop him from conceding defeat and surrendering control of Rutherford's body, but not before he discloses that his personality changed so much from the younger version to the current version because someone in Starfleet wanted him to forget having been in some kind of program that he was in and ordered his memories of it all erased, and that led to a massive personality change. As the episode ends, we see that Rutherford is determined to figure out the truth of his past, and we also see that Boimler is made to spend a night in the brig by Ransom, even though Ransom admits that he respected him for defending Starfleet because he left the booth and caused a ruckus against orders. Interestingly, in place of Mariner, who is the one that usually does that stuff, she actually followed orders this time and did a good job. So it was nice to see that. And it was interesting to see Boimler kind of like, screw the pooch because, well, he always screws the pooch, but, to get in trouble for it. But because he's in the brig, it's Mariner who ends up doing the mission log. And as she's doing it, she gets a call from the cheeky archaeologist who explains that while everyone was distracted by the rumble, she stole the Grand Negus' staff from the nearby museum. Why it would be in that museum, I don't know. But when she tells Mariner that she actually used to be in Starfleet and that she left, and that she knows what it's like to be in Starfleet, and that she'd be happy to have Mariner join her on one of her archaeological exploits, Mariner seems reluctantly open to it. And that's where the episode ended. I thought this was a really good episode. It was very funny, and there were a slew of references that I didn't have a chance to take down while I was taking notes of what was happening in the episode. But not only was it funny, it also gave us insight into Rutherford's past, which is something they brought up a while ago and kind of left alone and didn't deal with. But we're finally seeing more about that, and I think we're going to end up seeing yet more before the season ends. A lot of the funny moments came from the archaeologist character sort of throwing digs at Starfleet and pointing out, where it's not perfect, which I think is interesting for this show because I didn't think it would ever kind of go there. But well, I guess it does in little lighthearted ways, but in this way, she was like throwing digs at Starfleet for things about it that are true. And Mariner was having to justify, some of Starfleet's less than fantastic attributes. So it was interesting because, Starfleet, of course, isn't perfect, as nothing is. And it was good to see that explored on this show, and how Mariner reacts to it. Boimler reacted to it very badly after a while, but that's Boimler for you. But yeah, I thought this was a very good episode, very funny. It showed us more about Rutherford's past. It didn't give us that same old trope of, oh, an ensign is going through a rotation and they're not very good at it because they're not sure of themselves, which they use too often, which I said last week they didn't do because they had done it the previous week and I didn't like it. So yeah, another good episode of this show that I never thought I would ever like, but I'm loving it. And I'll be back to review the next episode. Before I go, I want to remind you about my Teespring store. You can get t-shirts there with the channel logo on it and other designs. It would really help out the channel. I want to encourage you to give the video a like, to subscribe to the channel, and to make a comment. I like getting comments. I like engaging with people who watch the videos, and I'd like to hear what you think about what I think. So please do if you would. Until I return, I wish you peace and long life.